All right, well, it's 10 o'clock, so we'll just get started. Let's see. You can all see my screen, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so today's session is going to be about following up with leads. You discussed lead follow-up in the last session, just about communication with the purpose of opening the door to two-way communication. So today we're going to talk about what happens next. So once you get a response from a lead, your goal is to convert that lead into an appointment, because if you don't have appointments, you don't have buyer and seller agreements, and then you don't have deals. So converting leads to appointments is really the key thing in the lead generation process to get to that conversion process. So this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk a bit about what lead conversion is, how you'll actually convert a lead to an appointment, and how you can improve your conversion rate. Okay, so like I said, lead conversion is a very essential part of the follow-up process. Often people assume that lead generation and lead conversion are the same, but that's not the case. Lead generation is when you turn activities, which is your prospecting and your marketing, into actual leads. But conversion is what happens after that lead is captured and is part of the lead follow-up process. So it is unique because these are the activities that turn your leads into appointments with the end goal of getting to a transaction. Okay. So I have a quote from the Shift book here, which is, "The effort you give to converting leads must match the effort you give to generating them." Why do you think that you need to spend the same amount of time, or that they both deserve the same amount of time? Any guesses? Well,
Nope, I don't have a guess. I'm sorry.
no. So it's basically what I said. So without converting those, like, you can do all the work to generate leads, but if you're not doing the work to actually convert them into clients, what's the point of lead generating at that point, right? If you're not doing it with the intention of converting them into appointments and then transactions. So you should be giving, it says the same amount of effort, I would say more effort into following up and converting those leads, because that is the most crucial part of that process. Okay. So in your manuals on page 11.3, there's a page on the lead conversion process. So you want to turn to that. So we have a quote again from the Shift book that comes up quite a bit in this session. But it says that consistently getting every possible appointment from the leads you generate isn't complicated, but it does require preparation, practice, and purposeful action. Okay, so this is a process that can happen very quickly. You'll see it illustrated here, but often it can happen slowly as well. So it depends on the type of leads you're generating and where they're coming from. We'll talk about that a bit later. So this is the process here in the model. So starting at the top with lead capture, you have to be able to capture the person's information, enough information, correct information, to be able to contact that person. Then you move to connecting, which is the second step, which is when you're building that connection, gaining more information, because capture, you're just getting their contact information, but then you want to find out, what are their intentions, what are they looking for, and just building that trust and that relationship. Okay. Then you go down to close, which is closing the appointment. So of course, without the appointment, conversion hasn't happened. So that's where you're trying to get to. Okay. But when the conversion step doesn't result in an appointment, what do you think happens next?
Literally, you just have to keep working on them.
Follow
Keep
up.
communication. Yeah, exactly.
So that's where this step 4 comes in. It's kind of like 2.5 to 4, which is cultivate. So you continue to cultivate that lead as part of your follow-up until they're ready to convert to an appointment. So you capture the lead, you connect with them, then you either close them or you cultivate them until you can close them. Again, after lead generation, lead conversion is definitely the most critical activity that you have to master, which is where possible business leads into probable business and then profitable business. So your possible business are your leads, people who might want to buy or sell. Turns into probable business when you actually start having a conversation and connecting, getting more details. And you need to go through those 2 steps in order to turn it into profitable business, which is where you're actually transacting with them. Okay. Any questions or ahas so far, just on that, what that process will look like? We're going to dive into it even deeper, but if there's any initial questions. All right, so let's look at how to convert a lead to an appointment. Okay, so we're going to break down that model even further and start with capturing. So this is on page 11.4 of your manual. But capturing at its simplest is collecting the minimum amount of information for a potential buyer or seller. Valid contact information, that's an important part. So this should be their name and a way to get a hold of them, like an email and a phone number, one or the other, at least one of them. And this will likely occur while you're lead generating. Okay. What are some methods you can use to actually capture leads, other than manually inputting them to command?
Like Facebook ads through command.
Networking.
For sale signs is another one. So if you have a listing with a for
That's
sale
true.
sign, people are going to call you about it. You want to take down their information and capture that lead. So if someone's interested in buying a house, they might have a house to sell as well. So those are ones you'll want to keep track of. If you do any mailers or flyers, or you have a booth in a home show, any of those type of things are places where you can capture leads. Okay. So when you're capturing leads, it's important to know what you're going to say before you start that conversation. In your book or in your manual, there is some guidelines for conversations. So we have a couple here on the slides as well. So you want to ask, if I were to need to contact you, what would that number be? If I found exactly what you're looking for, how would I contact you? And if I found out that information you're wanting, how would I get it to you? Those are just a couple of ways to word it when you're talking to someone to actually gather that information instead of just being like, can I have your phone number? Can I have your email? You're offering value. How am I going to send you this stuff? Okay. So for the first step of capturing, you want to have a system in place, have these conversations, practice them, make sure you have them in your head so you can pull on them when you're in those conversations. But once you have actually captured that information, obviously you want to put that information into your database and cultivate the relationship. So we'll get into that in a sec. Like I said, all leads may not be ready for an appointment. So then your goal is to then cultivate them so that when they're ready, they do think of you. Okay. So there is an activity in your participant guide. We don't spend too much time on it, but on that same capture page, you fill in how you're currently capturing leads. What information are you collecting? What are your current lead categories? And what can you do to improve your current capture system? Okay, so you can just chat about it quickly. How are you guys generating leads or capturing leads right now?
I'm a big, just like slow drip daily conversation. Like that's how I do it. Like for instance, is that like this weekend we were away from my brother's bachelor party. I met some of his friends from Toronto, and one of them casually mentioned leaving Ontario and heading east. Like it's extremely weak, and like it was over beer, so God knows how credible it is. But like I have it noted today to like make sure I add him on Facebook and just like shoot him a message about that.
I don't think
Just
that's
going
weak.
about your
Ross.
day-to-day
I think that is there is
conversations.
something to be said about face to face.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I've had better conversion rates over things like that than a Facebook ad. Not that I have business from a Facebook ad, but I don't know. I think that's great. That's kind of my approach too. So I like that.
I'm the same way. And I also go to like a lot of local networking events when I can.
Mhm.
As well.
Yeah. I've also this year, I was going to join a BNI, and I ended up deciding not to. But anyway, it made me start taking a lot of people for like coffee or lunch. So I a few weeks ago, I actually was like just creeping through some of the major law firms, and I actually found a guy that I knew from school. Like we weren't friends, but we connected, went to lunch, and now like nurture that lawyer, send him a deal or two, and could possibly start getting him back.
That's a good one.
I stick to the door knocking along with the social obligations, which I find pretty helpful, but door knocking is kind of like my go-to.
Yeah, I think anything in person now, it had so much more impactful, especially after the pandemic where you couldn't talk to people in person, everything was digital. Like just getting back to just having conversations with people in person, I think it goes a long way for sure.
Yeah.
So those other one, we don't have to go through the other questions, but just think about those things. So what information you're collecting, making sure that you're getting their name, their phone number, a way to contact them, categorizing them. That's another way to, make sure in command that you're able to find them and contact them in a systematic way. And then what can you do to improve your current capture system? So if you heard any things from everyone who's shared what they're doing, and it's something you're not doing, maybe think about how you could implement something like that or something similar. So just always be thinking of ways to improve that system. Okay. All right, moving into connecting. So connecting is about laying the foundation for that relationship. And what's important during this step is to listen to the person, ask good questions, offer solutions if they're presenting any problems, and just make sure to keep the focus of the conversation on them. The goal of the communication, in addition to building that relationship, is to determine their urgency. So, the example Alex gave, someone might want to move east. When would that be? Where would they be looking? Kind of figuring out those details, because that's how you can start to, provide value, be sending them properties, or even set them up on a saved search or a collab center. Those are those details that you really need to be able to truly cultivate those people. So just think of that when you're having those conversations. Okay. So there are some best practices around this. So embedding your value proposition that was talked about earlier in Ignite, role play and practice your conversations. So as you're thinking of these people you're going to talk to, it is good to have someone that you can sit down and practice these conversations with, role play with another agent or your spouse or someone that you can have that conversation back and forth with, because the more you practice it, the more confident you're going to be when you actually end up in that conversation in real life. And the third is a really good one, which is know the outcome that you want from a conversation before starting. This helps you lead that conversation towards converting them, and so that you can ask specific questions and use those, again, to lead them towards the appointment. Okay, so you're kind of working backwards. Okay, so on page 11.6 in your guide, you have the 6 connection questions. So the thing about connecting is that it's more than just small talk. It should always seek to answer these 6 basic questions. Who are they? What do they want or need to do? Where do they want or need to do it? Why do they want to need or do it? When do they want to need or do it? And how do they plan to do it? Okay. These questions help you gather that information that you need, but also helps that person open up to give you a bit more detail about, what they're looking for or what they're doing. Okay. So in your guide, you do have some examples of what those connection questions might look like in conversation. And these may or may not work for your business. We want to take some time to plan out a framework for that conversation that does work for your business. Because the more that you plan it out and you practice it, again, it's going to feel more natural. You'll be more confident, and it just helps you intentionally connect with the person and also qualify them at the same time. Okay. You're also going to find in your guide, you have a list of questions categorized by buyers and sellers, depending on who you're talking to. So as you go through that connection process and cultivate the relationship, you're going to learn more about the person, what they're looking to do, as you learn if they're looking to buy or sell, you can use those questions to start digging in deeper. Okay, so just make sure to document these conversations, their outcomes in your database. We'll look at how to do that at the end. Because keeping a strong record, documented record of the communication will help you know how to move that relationship forward. You have so much going on all the time. You're in so many different places at once. So just make sure to write some notes about what you've talked about so that you don't miss any of those details or forget them as time goes on. Okay, some of these people might be looking to buy or sell a year from now. So a year from now, are you going to remember the little tiny details they gave you over the phone? If not, then you probably should be writing it down. Okay. Any questions about all of this before we move on? Then we get into cultivate. So your goal in using the model here is obviously to go from immediately from capture to connect to close. But you're going to find a percentage of people that aren't going to be ready for an appointment. The person Alex was talking to isn't ready to meet with them and look at buying houses in Nova Scotia yet. So you're not quite there to close that appointment. So you're going to want to be following up and staying in communication and cultivate that relationship. Okay. This is the step of the model that most agents struggle with. Why do you think that is?
Well, for myself, I can say that I'm always so busy hunting for the person that's ready right now that I haven't been great at cultivating those folks that need more time because I'm not necessarily coming from abundance yet. So I try to come from abundance and try to just work on everything, but it's hard to prioritize when you're just on your own.
I find too, it's hard to figure out the exact like cadence that comes from a place of service versus bordering on being a pain in the, butt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, agents often struggle with this. A big part is you don't have the right systems in place to continue following up with that lead, especially if you feel it's going to take a ton of your time. There's a lot of ways to automate that. Sherry, I know you've been getting into smart plans more. And I'm sure that's taking a lot off of your plate. So having those systems in place to be able to follow up long-term is really key for that, because obviously as you get busy, you don't have time to call people, once a week, once a month. When you have that many people in your database, that just gets you really, really bogged down. So there's other ways to do it. But again, just having the right systems in place, even if you are making the call, having command remind you to make the call, you don't have to actually mentally think about it. And it takes a lot of that decision and, decision fatigue they talk about a lot. You just wake up, look at your tasks, and you have exactly what you need to do. So those systems are really important. So yeah, that a lot of agents will let the lead slip in that case if they're, a year out. It's not, I need to pay my bills and put food on the table this month. I'm not focused on people for a year from now. But you also have to think of it, a year from now, if you're doing the work now to follow up with them, these people are just going to appear. You're not going to need to do a whole lot of work to convert them to an appointment at that point, because you've done the long game of following up with them. So as time goes on, you're going to see this pay off in the long run. Okay. You don't want to let these leads go to waste. You're doing the work or spending the money to generate them. So just make sure you have those systems in place. So like I said, smart plans come in there with the touch campaigns. They're really, really important because these are the system that you can put in place to be cultivating your leads until they're ready to convert. Okay. So you can create your own touch campaigns in Command to fit your business needs, but there is a whole library of ones that are already done for you because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I recommend just browsing around there. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But finally, we have a quote here from the Shift book once again, which is, you can't know or predict when they will come to a decision, but if you're reconnecting with them in a systematic way, you'll have a great chance of being there when they do. That's when you'll be able to close for the appointment. Okay. Which brings us to the close. which on 11.9, you have a resource here in your manual, which you can use after Ignite as well. It comes in handy. But closing is when you actually ask for the appointment. So if you think of it like this, you are concluding one conversation, which is your connection or your cultivation, and you're seeing if there's a new one that can take place, because it is your responsibility to ask for that appointment. Okay, so just like the touches that you use to stay in proximity with these people, the format in which you ask for the close is important. So you could ask in a text message, in an email, a phone call, or in person. We did talk about this a little bit earlier, but what format do you think is the most effective of these four?
Phone call.
What about least effective?
Least email.
Yeah, so your least effective are going to be anything in writing. So your text messages, emails, because you're not communicating in real time, you don't have the chance to immediately respond to any issues or questions that they might have. So phone calls and in-person options are going to have the best effect on your lead conversion. Okay. So when you're setting the appointment, what are the most important parts to schedule? You're not just looking for a yes in response to asking for the appointment. As soon as you get a yes, you want to immediately schedule the appointment date, the time, and the location. Okay, you want to get that down pat right away and just get that out of the way. Okay. Any questions or ahas on the conversion model?
It's too simple, but it's so hard to do.
Simple, but not easy.
Yeah, I started putting all of my like decently warm leads in command. Just, like, even if like I got one the other day, it was like the weakest little thing. I call them and he's like, yeah, like I'm just sort of like starting to like look. He's like, I'm only 22, but I'll know by like next year or the year after I'm gonna want to buy a house. So I was like, you know what? I put him in my command and sent him like my buyer's guide to flick through. And now I'll just like quarterly touch.
Yeah.
And eventually if he stops answering, you just delete the opportunity. But I've really leaned into all leads, no matter what, go in as an opportunity. Because if they're just sort of sitting, I find if they're just sitting in contacts with a lead tag, I forget to do anything with them because I don't like smart plans. I need them like in my face, and I just make myself go through my opportunities once for the hot ones every week or so, and for the cold ones every month to 2 months. Just personally reach out.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm going to do some role play at the end of sort of what this looks like in command. So exactly what you said, creating an opportunity, even if, we always train you to create an opportunity when you have paperwork to submit, but you can be using that opportunity pipeline to really dig deep on this and make sure you're following up with those leads. That's what the cultivate phase is for of the pipeline.
There's a reason it only has like a 5% tag with it.
Exactly. All right. Last section here is improving your conversion rate. So now you've learned the model and the steps and the actions that it actually takes to convert a lead to an appointment. We're going to dig deeper into what a conversion rate is and how it can inform your business decisions. So your conversion rate refers to the percentage of leads that you ask for an appointment that actually are compared to those that actually agree to the appointment. So for example, if you ask 10 leads for an appointment and you set 8 appointments, you have an 80% conversion rate. Okay, so your ultimate goal is to increase your skills so that you can convert at the highest percentage possible, because the higher your percentage is, the more leads you have converted to appointments and then into transactions and then into GCI. If you're converting at a low percentage, this should tell you that you have a lead conversion challenge. You might be generating a lot of leads, but you're not putting enough effort into converting them, or you're just don't have that skill quite yet. Because the challenge is not the number of leads, but your ability to actually get them to that appointment. Okay. So here's how you can actually improve your conversion rate. One is time block. So this is very important that you're spending time. We always tell you to time block for your lead generation, but you should also be time blocking for your lead conversion. So set some time aside in your calendar that you're spending to actually go through your database or your pipeline or your notepad, wherever you're writing down these people's information, and making sure you're putting them into your database and putting them on a smart plan or creating the opportunity, giving them a call, whatever it is that you need to do, and make sure that you have that time specifically in your calendar. Okay. Number 2 is using systems and conversations. So practice your conversations, like I said, asking for the close, mastering your buyer and seller presentations, and building those relationships. Because again, the more that you practice them, the more confident you're going to be when you're actually in that. Conversations, again, they're a powerful tool. They can help you say what you intend to say in the most powerful way. So again, practicing them is very important. And then use systems to support your lead conversion. Just to make sure that you're taking the right steps at the right time and that you continue to keep and gain that mind share. So staying top of mind with these people. So those systems are, again, your database, your smart plans, your opportunities, and just making sure you're following up as much as you need to be. Then we have connecting with your whole database. So again, you don't want to neglect any part of your database. We're not just talking, your fresh leads that you're putting in. You have your sphere of influence in there, people that you actually know and already have a relationship with. You don't want to neglect that because that's going to be your biggest piece of business if you're constantly loving on those people, right? So make sure you're reaching out even to those people who, you didn't get through a traditional lead generation process, but anyone that's in your database, you should be talking to them regularly, okay? And also coming from contribution, talk about adding value a lot. You want to make sure that you're, reaching out with an offer or just even a care call. How are they doing? Curiosity, asking what they're up to, things like that. Just make it about them. It doesn't need to be about you. You want to know what they're looking for, what they're doing, and how you can help them. Okay. And then prioritizing qualified leads. So you're going to have a session coming up on qualifying buyers and sellers. So that's going to go more deep into how to prioritize the qualified leads while still also working on the rest of your database. So you'll have that coming up in a few sessions. So just recapping the whole lead conversion model. Every lead has the potential to turn into business, as we've already talked about. There are no bad leads. Okay. With the conversion model, you've learned that you have to capture the appropriate information for the lead. You need to connect with them to assess their needs and establish a relationship. Then you need to cultivate that relationship and close by asking for the appointment. Okay. Closing, you're in control of this. Okay. You may get calls that people want to meet with you, and that's great. But a lot of times you're asking for that appointment. So just make sure that in those conversations, you're asking for that. Okay. Any final ahas on that one? Really fly through it when they're very quiet. Okay. So it'd be helpful for you guys to see what this looks like in Command, like how you would actually use it to, do the capture, connecting, cultivating, all of that through, and what that process looks like. Okay, I'm going to show you anyways. All right.
Yes.
Let me just. You can see my command screen now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've come up with a little fake role play here. It's based on Marge Simpson. So let's say you did some door knocking and gathered some leads, and we're going to look at Marge Simpson in particular. So through your conversation, you gathered her information, and this is the information that you have. She has 2 kids and just had a baby, and you got her email and her phone number. That's all you've got. Okay. So when you have that limited amount of information, the first thing you want to do is add that person as a contact in Command. Okay, so I'm going to go to my contacts. I'm going to add the contact. Simpson. So that's the minimum information that I have about Marge. There is more information you can put in as time goes on. One thing you may want to do is track the lead source. So let's say I met Marge when I was door knocking. I can fill that in. It's just some extra information to keep track of things. Okay. So I'm going to create this contact, and now Marge is in my database. Okay, so that's the capture part. It's that simple. You're just putting the information you have into the database. The next step is connecting. So we'll want to call Marge and follow up on our conversation. And we're going to ask some of those connecting questions to get more information. Okay, so let's say she's not ready to move yet, but will likely want to upsize in a year or so when the baby needs its own room. Okay. What you'll want to do, like I said, is make sure you're documenting these details. And so in your database, you can actually click the plus button here and you can add a note. So I can say, not ready to move yet, likely in a year. Like that. And so now I have a simple note just reminding me that Marge might want to move in a year. Then you can, when you're talking to her, you can offer value. So like I said, you can offer to send properties, maybe set her up on a collab center, send your KW app link just so that they can view properties whenever they want to. There's different ways to be able to add that value. But again, you'll want to gather a few more details, like where they might want to move, what the price range is, and then again, sending that value piece through to them. So those are all things that you'll want to make notes of right here in Command. Okay. Because she's not ready to do anything yet, we're going to work on cultivating this lead. So the follow-up is key here. So first thing I can do, like Alex said, is create an opportunity for Marge. So I'm going to go to my opportunities tab right here, and I'm going to create an opportunity. I'll say it's a listing for now. Actually, we'll do buyer in this case. Once they find a house to buy, they might want to list their house, but we'll start with the buyer. The main things I want to fill in, we can fill in the time frame. So we know that she's looking in about 12 months. Maybe they have a budget of 500,000. It does require you to fill in a commission rate. So you can just fill in what you typically charge as a commission. And if that changes down the road, you can change it. Okay. Then you're choosing which phase of your pipeline to put it in. And we're going to leave it in cultivate because that's all we're doing. We're cultivating that relationship. Now I can click create. And so now I have this opportunity in my pipeline. It will show in the cultivate phase when you're looking at your pipeline, which just reminds you have that potential business there. So like Alex said, if it's just a lead in your database, it's easy to forget about them. But if you're in there, you know, you're working through your pipeline, your transactions and your active deals are in there, you're looking at it pretty often. And so if you see that you have, you know, 5 leads in cultivate, you're always going to be looking at that and just being reminded that you have those relationships to build, follow up with them, reach out to them, whatever it is there. So this is an important step. We don't talk about it a whole lot, but that's what the cultivate phase is there for. Okay. Another good thing is your smart plans. So if you have done any smart plans, you can click on the tab here and add them to a smart plan. A really simple one, if you haven't dove into smart plans yet, is called the quarterly call plan. It's made by Keller Williams. It's in the library there. But all it is it's a recurring task for you every 90 days, reminding you to follow up with this person. So at the very least, even if I'm not, you know, sending an email once a month or adding them to my newsletter or whatever it is, at the very least, I'm calling them every 3 months. I have my quarterly call plan. I can select that and confirm. And so now I'm going to get a task every 90 days to call Marge and see how she's doing. You know, if she's moved any closer to buying a new house. She wants information on, you know, what she needs to do to get her house ready to sell. All those different conversations you can have. But this will just create that task. So you don't have to mentally remember to call her. You're going to get a reminder right in command. Okay. Does that all make sense? Okay. You also have the saved searches option here. So if Marge was to download your app or sign up on your website and you know what she's looking for, where she's looking for it, you can create a saved search. And then she can get email updates. She can see a very special section in her KW app with all of the properties that meet her criteria, what's happening with them, what they're selling for, all of that information. So this is just another way to be able to add that value and be updating them on the market and what houses are available for them. Okay. So now we're going to fast forward about 8 months or so, and Marge calls you and she's ready to start looking for a house. Okay. So you decided to meet on, let's say this Friday, for a buyer consultation. You want to put that in your calendar for sure. Command makes that very easy. If you've connected your calendar in your settings, you can actually click the plus button here and add a calendar event. It's going to open a new tab in your Google Calendar, and it invites the contact to that event. So they're going to get an email. You can see Marge is right here. I can set this appointment and save it, and I can send the invite. So now it's in Marge's calendar as well. Okay. You can just go to the calendar manually or whatever system you're using to keep track of your appointments, but that's just a nice little add-on if you are using that. Okay. What I can also do is I can log the call as an activity. So instead of a note, I can actually click add activity. I can specify that I had a call with Marge. Discussed setting. And okay. So that shows that I actually had a call with Marge. And not to get too deep into the command side of it, but if you are setting goals in command, you have the ability to set what your income goals are and your appointment goals. This is actually going to track your activities towards that. So how many calls you're making, you know, all those types of things. This is where that comes from. So if you are setting those goals, you'll want to make sure you're logging these calls. And if you do have the Command mobile app, if you call the person right from the app, as soon as you hang up, it prompts you to log the call. So just an efficiency thing you can do. Okay, so we've set the appointment, and now what I can do is I can go into my opportunity, which is currently in Cultivate, and I can move it to the appointment phase. Okay, so I can do that just by opening the opportunity and editing it, or you can do it directly from your pipeline, of course, dragging it to the next stage. So I can do it here. Move the phase to appointment. And so now we're in the appointment phase. Click that too quick. Within the opportunity, once it's created, you can also track your dates. So we have our appointment scheduled. We did that today. And the appointment date is April 7th. Okay. You can then track when you won the agreement, once you actually have an accepted offer, you know, what the closing date is, all of those things. Okay, there's more information you can track here now, like the inspection date, escrow due date, which is Americanized, but inspection is helpful. But yeah, you can track all of those details there. And so now when I go to my pipeline, go back to opportunities, I now have a buyer in appointment. Okay, so this is very visual. You can see I have 2 in Cultivate, 1 in appointment. So I know I still have 2 leads that I still need to convert into appointments. So when you're sitting down to do your lead conversion time block, this will be very helpful because you just go straight into your Cultivate phase and start, you know, setting them up on a save search or giving them a call or sending them a text, whatever it is. It's just a good visual reminder to keep up with that. Any questions about that process or anything that I showed so far?
Nope.
Well, that's pretty much it for the session. If no one has any questions or ahas. The next session is strengthening your relationship. So it's going to dive more into that connecting phase and how to build the cultivate phase as well, of how to actually build those strong relationships with your leads. So that will be on Wednesday.
Thank you, Jessica. Again, I said this last time to Maureen. Don't take the silence as that people aren't learning or engaging. I'll speak for myself. I'm just soaking it all in. So thank you very much. This was very helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Jessica. That was great.
You're welcome. If anyone has questions after, you want to sit down and go over smart plans or anything like that, just send me an email. We can set up a time to sit down and do that.
Cool. Thanks, Jess.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, you too.
Thanks.
Sorry, we're so sleepy.
It's okay. It's a Monday morning. Okay,
Later.
bye.